What's going on, everybody? Josh Engleman for Awesemo.com, and I am back with my NFL DFS top 5 on DraftKings for each position: quarterbacks, running backs, wideouts, tight ends, and you can see defense on the screen. Now be sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Follow me on Twitter at Josh Engleman, only place you're going to get updates to my sim results as we get closer to lock. Let me know in the comment section underneath this video who is your favorite and least favorite of some of my contenders for this main slate for week 2. And finally, shout out to No House Advantage, the sponsor of the video. You can see the banner over here. Use the promo code Awesemo. Get yourself a little bit of extra cash when you sign up. Now, we're looking at the defense. I'm not digging into it. It feels random. 8% optimal at the top, 5% at number 10. Just, take whoever you need, make sure it fits your lineup. But now we start with the tight ends. We round out the bottom of the top 10 with Gerald Everett, Adam Troutman, Rob Gronkowski, James O'Shaughnessy, and Darren Waller. They're on the outside looking in. We've got a clear-cut number 1 tight end this week and a lot of similar stuff. So let's dive in with number 5. That would be last week's chalk, Kyle Pitts, 5,200 this week, projected for 12 fantasy points. Very difficult matchup coming up against Tampa Bay, the number 3 defense at PFF. The Falcons are 12-point underdogs with a 52-point total, so you expect them to throw. You also don't expect Kyle Pitts to be going for big numbers. I don't have him going north of 30 all that frequently. No surprise there. He is a tight end. But an 8% likelihood of being the optimal tight end just overall. I like it. I like the price tag. I like the game script for Atlanta as well. Or you can go to number 4, pay down quite a bit more. 9.5 fantasy point projection for Jared Cook and the Chargers. Gets a date with Dallas. Dallas defense, not very good. Monster total in this game, 54.5 in fact. A 9% likelihood of Cook being in the optimal. I like him for double stacks going to the Chargers. This is just a fantastic offensive environment, and you want to make sure you have at least a little bit of Jared Cook if you're going to Chargers stacks. Now we're paying up a little bit more, 6,400 for George Kittle, projected for 15 fantasy points. The Niners take on the Eagles in Philadelphia, 50-point total, but the Niners are favored. You're not really worried about Philly. They're a middle-of-the-pack team, or at least that's how they project as of now. You could go big with Kittle, but really, you're just happy to have a slightly higher than normal tight end ceiling. 6,400 works. 9% of the time, he's in the optimal. He's I don't want to say very close, but he's close to being the number 2 guy. He was never going to get to number 1 here, but if you need to pay up, no one's mad that they get George Kittle. Back to saving a little bit of salary, and you can see we're moving into, I'd like to say that he's in a second tier. That would be Noah Fant. He's 4,200, projected for 10.7 fantasy points, and he gets to take on the Jacksonville Jaguars. They are 28th in defense at PFF. Denver is a 6-point favorite with a 45-point total. This seems really good on the surface to me. You're not rostering Noah Fant because you're hoping for this monster 30-point game, but is 2 touchdowns crazy? I don't think it is. Not against Jacksonville. 12% chance of being in the optimal, and you see him start to separate a little bit. It doesn't get to 1, but Noah Fant at 2 looks pretty good. But not nearly as good as the number 1 tight end this week. That would be $4,100 Tyler Higbee. The Rams taking on Indy. Tough matchup there. It's a top 10 defense, but Rams are going to throw 47.5-point total. You're really just getting Higbee at a price tag that should be, I don't know, $1,000 more expensive. That's why you're seeing him get into the 19% optimal range, well north of everybody else. When push comes to shove here, Tyler Higbee is just mispriced. He should be probably $5K, and if he was, this would bring everybody together. But for right now, he's my preferred cash game option if you can't pay up, and to me, a no-brainer. He's going to be the most owned tight end this week. On to the wideouts now, and there is not a lot of separation in the top 10, but we will round out that bottom of the top 10 with Robert Woods, Allen Robinson, Calvin Ridley, CeeDee Lamb, Stephon Diggs. I probably don't need you to tell you guys that you should play those guys. They all look really good. And the top 5 is pretty similar. Honestly, there's not a lot of separation here. I do like going to some of these wideouts, but it's like the least creative place on the slate this week. This is pretty obvious as far as I'm concerned. One of the more popular value plays will be Cole Beasley. He's 4,600, projected for 13.5. Didn't go great for the Bills last week. Hope to right this ship this week against Miami. Buffalo is in Miami. Miami projects as the 27th ranked defense. This is a 48-point total. 15% of the time you get Cole Beasley in an optimal. I think he's one of the few true value options that work at wideout this week. 2 Cowboys in the top 10, no surprises. Number 4, Amari Cooper is 6,800, projected for about 19 fantasy points. He gets that incredible matchup against the Chargers, not the best defense. 54.5 point game total, so you know the throwing is going to be there, and we saw that in week 1 for the Cowboys. Now we're starting to get into guys with ceilings. 6% chance that Amari Cooper goes for north of 30. 15% overall that he's just simply in the optimal lineup. Whether you're going to Cooper or going to CeeDee Lamb, who's my number 7 guy, I don't think that you can really go wrong with the Cowboys offense. Or you can switch sidelines and go to number 3, Keenan Allen, 7K, just short of 19 fantasy points. Great matchup against Dallas. They're the 26th ranked defense, so you're not worried there. Same sort of huge total, 54.5. Chargers are, this is going to be a game where both teams are just simply slinging it. 7% chance that he goes for north of 30 fantasy points. 16% likelihood of being in the optimal. I love the bringbacks. It's going to be popular, but if you're going to Cooper or Lamb, bringing it back with Allen just seems like an absolute no-brainer. These guys profile very well this week. As does $6,600 Chris Godwin against the number 30 ranked defense of the Atlanta Falcons, projected for 18 fantasy points. This is the number 1 offense in the league per PFF. They're 12-point favorites, a 52-point total, a 6.5% chance to go for north of 30, and a 17% likelihood of being in the optimal. Chris Godwin is just shy of being the number 1 wideout for this week. The price tag is fantastic. The matchup is great. I don't know what else you could possibly want here. Godwin looks amazing. But the number 1 wideout this week, unquestionably for me, that's Cooper Kupp. He's only 6K. 18 fantasy point projection. It's in Indy. It's a 47.5 point total, so you're not worried about offense. I'm happy to watch them throw. The Rams are the number 8 offensive PFF. Now, Indy's defense isn't bad, but this price tag is just too good to pass up on. 4% chance to go for north of 30, but a 19% likelihood to be in the optimal lineup. That is bigger than any other wide receiver on this slate. Cooper Kupp is the number 1 wideout for Sunday. Now look at that breakdown for running backs. 2 separate guys clearly pulling away from the pack. The rest of it all looks pretty similar. We're kind of on the same tier. We round out the bottom of the top 10 with Alvin Kamara, Joe Mixon, Austin Eckler, Nick Chubb, and Mike Davis on the outside looking in. 3, 4, and 5 aren't all that different. I'm excited to get to 1 and 2. Now at number 5, we're paying up. 9,100 for Dalvin Cook. You were hoping for a little bit more last week, but it was totally fine. He's projected for 23 fantasy points here. Taking on Arizona, the pace of the game should pick up at least a little bit from the matchup. 51 point total looks great. Dalvin Cook's involved no matter what. They're the number 12 offense going up against the number 11 defense. So, I don't know. Call it a wash. Call it an average matchup. 24% of the time, though, Dalvin Cook is going for north of 30. 14% chance that he is simply just in the optimal. Don't overthink it. You're still working Dalvin Cook in here. I think he looks great as a pay-up option. Heading to the mid-tier now. 6,100 David Montgomery, projected for 16. Matchup against Cincinnati. Defense is better than most people probably realize. 13th via PFF. Bears are slight favorites. 45-point total isn't the best. 22nd ranked offense, not really that either. You're not expecting the monster game from Montgomery. 2.5% chance to go for north of 30, but the floor seems pretty high here. 16% overall chance that David Montgomery shows up in an optimal. Looks pretty similar. If you've got 6,100, you're happy to go there. I think you're going to prefer the 6K options that are first and second for right now. But either way, I'm happy to get to Montgomery. It's certainly his workload to have. All right, this one legitimately scares me, but the game script just looks great. Number 3, Ezekiel Elliott, projected for 17 fantasy points. Just 6,200. What a fall from grace. It's in LA. 54.5 point total, as I've touched on. Not a great Chargers defense. This is the price tag where you take Zeke and you hope for the big day. The 3% chance that he goes for north of 30 fantasy points. The 17% likelihood that he is in the optimal. He's got to right the ship at some point in time. Better, I guess, in week 1, whatever you want to say about it. I don't know what to make of Ezekiel Elliott anymore, but at 6,200, I'm more than willing to take the chances. Showing up at number 2, Chris Carson, just outside that number 1 spot. Only 6,100, saw a monster workload in week 1, projected for 18 fantasy points. Takes on a Tennessee team with a terrible defense, 29th via PFF. Seattle, 6.5-point favorite, so you expect Carson to get workload throughout the entire game. North of 50-point total, so there's absolutely fantasy points to be had. He goes for 30 fantasy points 6% of the time, and he's in the optimal lineup 25, I almost said 24, I don't know why, 25% of the time. He might as well be number 1. He's not on a technicality. There is a very clear top 2 tier, and Chris Carson is a part of it. But at number 1, we're going to Najee Harris. He's 6,300, projected for 19. Gets a date with the Raiders. 22nd ranked defense. Now, Pittsburgh's offense is bad. Ben Roethlisberger stinks, but they're still 6-point favorites with a 47-point total. Even with the bad offense, Harris gets the touches, and that's what matters most, or at least he did in week 1. 8.5% chance to go for north of 30. 26% chance that he's simply in the optimal. The Najee Harris-Chris Carson combination looks fantastic to me. Just be aware of the ownership as you're building out your lineup, but Harris and Carson, number 1 and number 2 running backs for the slate. Now, before we get to the quarterbacks, one last reminder to hit the like button, subscribe to the channel, and hit the notification bell so you know when everything goes live. Then head to Twitter and follow me at Josh Engleman. Only place you get the updates for these sim results as we get closer to lock. In the comment section, I want to know who your favorite players are at every position. And if you don't like any of the guys that I've got, let me know. Finally, again, shout out to No House Advantage. The banner is on the screen. Thank you for being the presenting sponsor of my top 5s. Little bit of separation in the top 5. I don't know what separation is, but I was going to try to say it. The words, I'm losing them. I need more coffee, everybody. We've got Baker Mayfield, Russell Wilson, Kyler Murray, Matt Stafford, and Teddy Bridgewater rounding out the bottom of the top 10. Number 5 is pretty similar. We do take a little bit of a step up to 2, 3, and 4, and then we do separate a little bit of the pack from number 1. Last week's primary cash play, Jalen Hurts, is in at number 5, 6,500, projected for 23. Tough matchup against San Francisco, but 50-point total. You expect Jalen Hurts to be involved on the ground, so the floor helps a little bit. 5% chance to go for north of 30. 7% chance that he is in the optimal lineup. I don't really have much to add here. Jalen Hurts works. It's not the coolest matchup in the world. I can easily get away from him this week. 2 of his wideouts are in the top 10 at wide receiver, so Dak Prescott at number 4 looks great to me. Perfect stacking opportunity. He's 6,800, projected for 24. Huge total, bad defense, 11% chance to go for north of 30, but he's still only showing up in the optimal 10% of the time. It's just, you're not going to get there from a quarterback perspective. You can go a couple different directions, but unquestionably, this looks like an excellent game to target Dak, particularly after week 1. Or you can go to the GOAT in a cupcake matchup, 6,900, 24.5 fantasy projection for Tom Brady, 12-point favorites, 52-point total, the number 30 ranked defense in the league, 10% chance of being in the optimal, same as Dak, 12+% chance of going for north of 30 fantasy points. What's not to like? You get the opportunity to roster Chris Godwin. Obviously, more pass catchers on the Bucs also work. Gronk also works, ranked in the top 10 for tight ends. I just don't see a reason why you wouldn't want to go to Tom Brady. Unless you think Josh Allen rights the ship, 7,200, 25 fantasy point projection, taken on Miami, the 27th ranked defense via PFF. He goes for north of 30, 18% of the time, 10% likelihood of being in the optimal. There's a ceiling here for Allen. The matchup is here, and he really needs a better showing than he had last week. Losing, getting upset by the Steelers. That's a good Steelers D. It's not the same thing for Miami. But the number 1 quarterback for the slate is Justin Herbert, 6,700, almost 25 fantasy points for the projection, taking on a Dallas team that has a really not good defense, 26th. Massive total on the game as well. Slight favorites too. You know they're going to be throwing the ball. Justin Herbert separates from the pack, got the 14% optimal. That's a lot more than the 10 we see right behind him, plus 13% likelihood to go for north of 30. Justin Herbert is the number 1 quarterback for week 2 in the NFL. Alrighty, folks, that will do it. Those are my NFL DFS contenders, my top 5 at each position for week 2 in the NFL. What up to DraftKings, but really what up to No House Advantage. Keep your eyes peeled for the updates on Sunday. I've got 2 shows, one at 9 a.m., one at noon for live before lock. It's going to be a good one. If you have any questions, let me know in the comments section. There's a FanDuel version of this video around here somewhere, so keep your eyes peeled. Good luck this Sunday. I'll talk to you again next week for another edition of my Top 5.